I didn't really notice when it started changing. At first, I thought trading was just charts and strategy. If I learned enough patterns, if I watched enough videos, if I stayed consistent, it would eventually click. That's what I believed. But nothing clicked. I was still sitting there in front of the screen, day after day, watching price move exactly how I expected it to move, and still finding ways to lose money. Not because the market was wrong. Because I was wrong. And the worst part wasn't losing. It was the confusion. Because outside of trading, I was fine. I could follow rules. I could go gym. I could wake up early. I could stay disciplined in normal life. But the moment I opened the charts, something changed. My hands felt different. My thinking got faster. My patience disappeared. It took me a long time to admit this. The problem wasn't discipline. It was pressure. When money is on the line, your body reacts before your mind even gets a chance to think. I didn't understand that at first. I thought I just needed more control. More discipline. More focus. But every time I tried to force discipline, I actually made it worse. Because I was still emotionally attached to every trade. If you want to know how to completely stop revenge trading and being emotional on the charts, I made a book about it. Link in the description. I remember days where I would take a loss early in the session, and even if I told myself it's fine, it wasn't fine. I would sit there watching the next setup and my mind would already be in recovery mode. Not trading mode. That's when I started to see it clearly. I wasn't trading the market anymore. I was trading my emotions. There was a period where I would wake up, open the charts, and already feel tension in my chest. Not excitement. Not curiosity. Tension. Like something needed to happen today or I was behind. That's dangerous. Because when you need a trade to work, you stop seeing it objectively. You start forcing entries. You start speeding up decisions. You start seeing confirmation where there is none. And I've seen it happen again and again. Even when I switched markets. Some traders move from NQ to ES thinking it will fix them. Slower movement. Cleaner structure. Less noise. It helps a little. But not because ES is safer. Because it gives you more time to hesitate. That's all. Go is even worse for some traders. It looks clean on hindsight, but in real time it can be aggressive. Fast expansions, sharp reversals, emotional stop-outs. If you're already unstable, gold doesn't fix you. It amplifies you. I learned something simple from that. It was never about the instrument. It was about me. So I stopped trying to find the best market. I started focusing on something else. My state. Before I traded, I would sit there for a while. No charts. No noise. Just observing how I felt. If I was impatient, I didn't trade. If I felt like I needed money that day, I didn't trade. If I felt reactive, I didn't trade. At first, it felt like I was doing nothing. But that nothing was actually the work. Because I started noticing patterns in myself. The same emotional cycle kept repeating. Calm overconfidence, impulsive trade loss, frustration, revenge trading, more loss, shutdown. It wasn't random. It was predictable. Once I saw that, I stopped trying to fix trading. I started interrupting the cycle. If I took a loss, I stopped immediately. No recovery trades. No, one more setup. I would step away. Sometimes I would just walk. Sometimes I would do nothing at all. The goal wasn't to win back money. The goal was to reset the state. Because I realized something important. Most damage doesn't come from the first loss. It comes from what you do after it. And slowly, over time, something started changing. I wasn't reacting as fast. I wasn't chasing every move. I wasn't trying to force outcomes anymore. I started waiting more. Not because I became patient overnight, but because I stopped trusting emotional decisions. That's when trading started to feel different. Not easier. Just quieter. And in that silence, I started seeing the market more clearly. No stories. No pressure. Just structure. People think trading is about finding the perfect setup. But in reality, the real edge is not breaking yourself when you're wrong. And that took me longer to learn than anything else. Because strategy is fast to learn. But control takes repetition under pressure. And most people never stay long enough in that phase to actually change. They keep restarting. New strategy. New account. New hope. Same cycle. I didn't want that anymore. So I stayed with one process. One approach. One way of behaving. Even when it felt slow. Even when nothing was happening. Because I understood something simple. If I keep changing the system, I never get to see if I'm the problem. And in most cases, I was. Not the market. Not the strategy. Me. That's what I had to fix first. Ghost mode isn't about looking disciplined or trying to be mysterious. It's a control mechanism. A temporary removal of external input so your brain can stop reacting to noise and start rebuilding internal structure. When I was still unstable in trading, I noticed something simple. Every time I stayed connected to people, social media, discords, other traders, opinions, my mind never fully settled. Even when I wasn't trading, I was still processing information. Still comparing. Still reacting. Still absorbing other people's views on the market. That matters more than most traders realize. Because your brain doesn't separate trading time and non-trading time cleanly. If you're constantly exposed to stimulation, your nervous system never fully resets. You stay slightly elevated. Slightly reactive. Slightly impatient. And when you open the charts like that, you're already behind internally. That's why ghost mode is necessary. Not as motivation. As nervous system control. When I went into full isolation periods, I started noticing something interesting after a few days. My thinking slowed down. My urge to act reduced. I wasn't scanning for opportunities constantly. I wasn't trying to figure things out every minute of the day. My mind started doing less. And that less was actually progress. Because before that, I thought improvement meant more effort. More watching. More learning. More input. But in trading, too much input creates emotional noise. Ghost mode removes that. You stop explaining yourself. You stop consuming other people's trades. You stop reacting to opinions. You stop jumping between ideas. And eventually, something resets. Not instantly. Slowly. Your mind stops looking for validation in external sources and starts returning to your own process. At first, it feels uncomfortable because silence exposes how dependent you were on stimulation. That's the part most people can't handle. They think ghost mode is loneliness. It's not. It's withdrawal from emotional dependence on information. And that's where the rewiring actually begins. Because once external noise is reduced, you finally see your real trading behavior. Not the version you explain to people. The actual version. Asterisk how fast you get impatient. Asterisk how you behave after loss. Asterisk how you distort setups under pressure. Asterisk how quickly you want recovery trades. You can't fix what you can't observe clearly. And you can't observe it clearly while your mind is constantly being pulled in different directions. Ghost mode creates the gap where awareness becomes possible. And that gap is where the real work starts. Not strategy changes. Not new indicators. Not motivation. Just awareness of your actual reactions, without interference. Most traders try to rewire their brain while still plugged into everything that originally broke it. That doesn't work. You don't reprogram a system while it's still being overloaded. You disconnect it first. Then you rebuild. Talking about trading sounds harmless, but for most developing traders it becomes a leak in discipline. When you tell people you trade, you immediately turn a private skill-building process into a public identity. That changes how you behave without you noticing it. Now you're not just trading. You're trying to be a trader in front of other people. That creates pressure. You start wanting results faster because someone might ask you how it's going. You start over-explaining your decisions. You start justifying losses. You start posting wins when you shouldn't even care yet. It shifts your focus from execution to perception. And perception destroys consistency. There's also another issue. When you talk about trading with people who don't understand it, you get emotional contamination. Their opinions, their skepticism, their encouragement, their fear, all of it gets into your system. Even if they mean well, they are reacting emotionally to something they don't operate in. That noise stays in your head when you sit down to trade. Now you're not just reading charts. You're also managing other people's expectations inside your mind. The cleanest traders don't carry that. They separate identity from execution. Trading is not something they are in front of people. It's something they do in private, under control conditions, where no external validation is involved. There's also a psychological trap most people miss. When you talk about trading, your brain often starts rewarding you for intention instead of results. You feel like you're progressing because you explain your plan, talk about your goals, or discuss strategy with someone. But none of that has risk attached. None of that has execution pressure. So you get a false sense of progress without actual performance. That's dangerous because it slows down real improvement while making you feel active. Silence forces honesty. No performance. No image. No explanation. Just your behavior on the chart and the outcome it produces. That's why going quiet isn't about secrecy or ego. It's about removing external feedback loops so your brain stops performing for people and starts executing for accuracy. Until you reach stability, the less people know, the cleaner your decision-making stays.